So Johan is a distinguished advocate of AI and a prominent speaker at international forums discussing the fourth industrial revolution and emerging technologies. So his insights on the intersection of innovation and regulation, particularly in the South African context, will be very invaluable as we explore the path from disruption to direction. So welcome, Johan. So good to see you. So Johan's talk today focuses on why compliance is the foundation of trust, integrity and sustainable growth in South Africa's digital age. So I'm super excited. This is obviously right up my alley as compliance. And just a reminder, please do remember that we will have a Q&A with Johan and Peter in a bit. So do send in your questions on the chat. So I'm going to hand over to you, Johan. I mean, I know you've got some fascinating insights to also share with us. Not at all.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here. I can't see you, but I might have some former colleagues who are viewing. 10 years ago, I was working in group technology in 105, which I don't think exists anymore. I'm not sure. I hear rumors. But I had two of the, what I would call eureka experiences of my life when I was working with Nedbank. And I'm going to tell you those stories, which will hopefully set the scene for where I went with my career and why I'm doing what I'm doing, which is around AI ethics, compliance, responsible AI, and the like. But first, I just want to tell you a little story, and this is a bank, a client of mine who is not green, so you don't have to worry. They called me in to speak to their retail banking leadership team around using AI in retail banking, and a lot of the banks are already using it, predictive analytics, fraud detection, the chatbots and the like. But I'm a customer of this bank, and as a consumer, and I'm unfortunately not their biggest customer by far, I was so irritated with the chatbots and the contact centers and the like. And a lot of us struggle, a lot of our service providers are trying their best, but we struggle getting to all the calls, first-time resolution and the like. So I did something gutsy because I was so frustrated with them. I walked into this boardroom, about 12 executives around the table. We're going to talk about AI and retail banking, a lot of amazing use cases. And I thought I might lose them as a customer, but I wanted to make a point. And as the meeting started, I said, do you mind if I make a quick call before we start? And they said, okay. And I phoned their contact center, and I put my phone on speaker. And we waited for how long? 45 minutes before my call was answered. They were shocked because it was their bank that I was calling as their customer. The reason why they were shocked, and you'll see how this will flow into my conversation today, is because they never phoned their own contact center. And I often tell my clients, please consume your own products. Go to the branch on a Saturday, not as the executive, as just a normal person, stand in the queue, listen to what people are saying. Because AI, predictive analytics, large language models, all these amazing things that we are talking about, will never replace that human-to-human gut feel, really. So I encourage you, in the age of AI, and the work that you are doing, the important work that you are doing, acknowledging that banking and financial services is difficult because of the regulatory landscape you're working in. You can't just, like some of my other clients, be cowboys and AI, everything. Consume your own products, and please, may AI and these technologies never, ever replace your common sense and your experience. It never will. So here are my two stories to start off with when I was working at Nedbank. So I was in group tech, and we did a proof of concept with one of the large global vendors, and they brought in an AI platform in the area where we worked. Now, I've been in tech all my life. I knew a little bit about AI. You know, it's been around, at least in concept, for about 60 years, even though it's only the last decade, and especially the last 2 or 3 years, where it's really become a thing for most of us. And I was blown away by, this is 10 years ago, which in AI terms feels like the previous millennium, what this platform could do when it came to predicting, looking at large data sets, and helping us as a team to get better at what we do. But in that same, or at that same time, in fact, in that same month, I became a father of an adopted little baby boy. I'm going to talk about him today, Aiden. And for some reason, this wow technology and making sure that this kid has got a chance in life came together for me. I don't know how it happened, it did. I started reading every book I could, every video I could see, every YouTube video, speak to anyone I can to learn as much as I can learn about this technology. And hopefully one of the things that will come out of today is that self-education, self-learning, these kind of events, absolutely, but don't be lazy. I know it's tough with kids and work and life is crazy, but never, ever, ever stop learning. Don't become an expert. You don't have to, an AI expert or a data scientist necessarily, but in your area of interest, in the domain that you work in, there are so many newsletters, LinkedIn, the YouTube videos, the free resources, and obviously in your learning and development space here in the bank. Keep on reading, keep on learning. Now, I work in this field, and I spend 2 hours every morning to educate myself. Now, I'm an early bird, luckily, so 4 o'clock I start. Okay, but then don't call me at 8 p.m. because I'm not going to do any late calls with you guys. 4 to 6, I read my newsletters. I've got a platform that's summarizing all the news feeds, looking at videos and stuff, because I can't allow my customers to ask me questions and know about things that I don't know about. Now, I work full-time in this field and I'm not keeping up. How will people in banking, in other fields that they work in, keep up? So as long as we're hungry and we keep on learning. So worked here at the bank, discovered how incredibly powerful artificial intelligence is, and I became a father. So that's the first story. The second story that really revolutionized my life is one day, it was about 4 years ago. So Aiden was 1.5 years when we adopted him. He's now 11. And he had to do a school project entitled All Robots Our Friends. And I thought, we are going to knock this out of the park. I'm going to help him. We're going to sit down with the laptop. It's going to look amazing, the best kind of images and stuff. And still letting him do it, because how would he learn? But I'm going to put in some amazing AI pictures and stuff. Now, my son is African. He's, as I said, adopted. It's a mixed race baby. I obviously look like I fell in the bleach when I was born, even though I am African. I've got nowhere else to go, no other visas or anything else. But now we start Googling, and I even in today's age, I challenge you, if you haven't already seen this. Now we started looking for pictures on AI, robotics, humanoid robots, and the like, because we wanted this assignment to look incredible. And then he said something to me that I never thought about before. He said, "Daddy, why do these robots all look like you and not like me?" And I had to chew on that because I never thought about this before. And the reason why I'm telling this story is I never realized what a big problem we have from an inclusivity point of view. In countries outside of Northern America, Northern Europe, the so-called global North. And I started researching this. I did some work with Cambridge University. They have an amazing initiative called New Images of AI, because the point is the narrative that we are telling our youngsters is that AI is represented by men who look like me. 3% of people in Africa who enter data science, only 3% are female, young girls. Wow. Because the story, the narrative is it's a white man's world. And this is not a racial discussion, it's an inclusivity discussion. And we're going to bring the compliance lens into it. So my encouragement to all of us is always, yes, use these amazing global platforms, the Microsofts, the AWSs of the world, the Googles. We should never reinvent the wheel. But we should never use this technology as just a copy and paste without making sure that it is serving our needs, our business needs, our staff needs, but especially our customer needs and the greater environment and nation that we live in. Very, very important. That's where the so-called biases comes in, and there's various different definitions for it. But if you use one of these text-to-image models like DALL-E, and there are so many, and you say, give me a picture of a leadership team, 90% of the time it will be a team that looks like me. So why can women not be leaders? They should be. So the platforms we build, while we use this great technology that we have from the US and elsewhere, should be absolutely beneficial to people who live in this country. I always say, your applications, can they work on dumb phones? In other words, when they not smartphones like we have, for people in rural areas potentially, although many of them have incredible phones, in areas where there's not enough connectivity, in areas where 6 people in a family share the same phone. It's so easy to build things for people like us and not for people who we serve. One other story as an example. Say my banking client said, Johan, can you and your team help us build an algorithm to identify family units in the bank? Because maybe there's a new educational product we want to sell, saving for university one day or whatever. I can do it with my team. But this is how I would build it. Because my definition of a family is a man and a woman and probably a child or children. And I'm not wrong at all, but it's not complete. And that's when a colleague must gently guide me and say, but what about same-sex couples? Are they not a family? What about people who do not or cannot have children? What about single parents? And there's probably about 12 different iterations of what it is to be a family. And I always say, it is nothing wrong with being biased, because we all are. It has to do with your upbringing. As a man, it has to do with how my mother was treated in the home I grew up in, how I viewed women because of that upbringing, and so forth, and so forth. We all have biases. The problem is to not know that you're biased. And that's why diversity, and especially in this incredible country which is so diverse, and I love it. I lived in Europe, it was boring. I lived in the US, it was boring. Yeah, stand in the queue in the bank or at the traffic light, the robot, or people chat, people talk. Even if they moan about Eskom, we're talking. So you need a multidisciplinary team, HR, compliance, legal, change management. Those people have to be involved in these initiatives, but people who are of different age groups, ethnicities, different walks of life. Let's not build things that will only serve people who are like us, earn like us, or who look like us. Now, why is regulation and compliance important? Now, I want to give you a little trick, and please don't do this. I know they're going to fire me for saying this. I worked at a large consulting firm a few years back, and it was an audit firm, so compliance training was even worse than you might have here in the bank. And it was mandated, and there were serious consequences if you didn't do it because of the nature of audits and the controversies around some of our audit firms and the like. And it was actually in lockdown, so working at home. And I don't know about you, but when I work at home and I have targets and things to do, I suddenly become a champion, dishwasher and laundry person. And the house is clean, but I don't get to the stuff I need to do. I think we all struggle with that. But now compliance training, it pops up, and oh my word, now I have to watch the video. And you can't skip it, you have to watch it till the end, as you should. And then there's the multiple choice questions, which I always say, if you really know the topic, multiple choice is there to confuse you. But if you really don't know it and you wing it, you've got about a 20 or 25% chance of having the right answer. So what I would then do is, so while the video is playing, I would go wash the dishes, I would come back. And then MCQs pop up. And then I would just screenshot it all the time because I could redo it a few times. And this is before ChatGPT, because now I'm sure it's easy. But the point I'm making is I did all the compliance training and I went through it and I succeeded without learning a thing. So that is the problem, because compliance is seen as boring. It's almost like the headmaster watching you. It's like if there was a CCTV camera here in the classroom. Teachers may be gone, but we know they're watching us. Our behavior will be totally different because we know we're being watched, okay? So why is compliance important? Now, I think before I became a father, I would never have thought of compliance in this AI age in particular being important. Now think of this. We don't regulate the use of Microsoft Excel. I know it sounds a little bit ridiculous. We also don't regulate the use of computer keyboards. There's no regulation for that. And why? Because you cannot cause harm with it, unless you slap somebody over the head with your keyboard. We regulate things that causes harm, like traffic, using your car, wearing a seatbelt, driving on the right side of the road, or in our case it's the left side, but it's the right side, left side, the speed limit and so forth, because hundreds of thousands of people die and get injured in cars all over the world every year. That's why we regulate it. Now, why do we need to regulate, and why is compliance important in this age that we're living in? AI is a neutral tool, like all tools humans have ever created. it is not fundamentally good or bad. Now, the potential benefit for us and our children is there in education, in employment, in the distribution of wealth. There are, in healthcare in particular. But the other side of this neutral tool is where the bad stuff happens. And the longer I work in this field, and as a father, the more I'm leaning toward a more dystopian view of where we might go one day if we don't do this right. And if we don't make sure that something like compliance and regulation is in our blood, it can never be a tick box exercise, you know. My fear is that when Aiden is 40 or 50, I'll probably not be around anymore. If he and his generation looks back at us and they say, you were asleep at the wheel, AI is destroying our world. We have no more privacy. We have really this big brother that the author spoke about in 1984, George Orwell. We have no more freedom. We are under total state control, which we already see happening in China. And why did you guys not do more? And who should do more? Not just our government or the UN, all of us in our little way, parents in particular. As fellow countrymen and women, to be inclusive, I don't know what the word is there, but even if it's just the way I teach my son how to use AI, my own little way, even if you're not an expert, to help teachers in school to utilize this technology if they can. If my son can learn to use it to his benefit, and yes, cheating on homework, which I encourage with AI because school homework is super boring and repetitive, ChatGPT at my man. Do not be afraid of it, but to be careful. As an example, again in lockdown, he was playing this Lego game. And we have this Google speaker, smart speaker, and we have this Google app, and then he had his Google blocks. And it was quite a cute game because he could ask the AI, tell me a story about farm animals. And then he would use his his farm animal Lego blocks and play. And then he started chatting more and more to this AI chatbot. And I was sitting in the other room, but I was listening in while I was working. And the conversation became more and more kind of friendly but personal until the AI started asking him, what is your name and what's your address? What's your father's name? Where does he work? Now, as a kid, he knows about stranger danger on the street, but they don't know it with technology. I jumped over that desk to plug this thing out. And then I had to train him. Be careful regarding your privacy, what you reveal. The fact that this app, it's a Lego app, it's not a Lego product, some third-party product. The fact that it asks you this kind of information is a huge red flag. So we need to train our children. May they never look back and say we were asleep at the wheel. It's our responsibility. AI will, and related technologies, there is a possibility that even in the next few years, we will live in a world that we cannot imagine at this stage. And I often find that there are two sides of the argument, and that's good. The one side is the utopian, we can really do good with it, we can help our children, absolutely true. Other side, again, regarding privacy, invasion of our privacy, algorithmic control at a state level, or at a large organizational level like these big trillion-dollar technology companies, that is really a big concern. And that's why regulation is important. Now, just quickly on regulation and a few more comments before we look at questions from you and from the audience. We all know what's POPIA, privacy. Mm-hmm. It is, we have world-class regulation in South Africa regarding privacy. Very much aligned with GDPR in Europe and in other areas. But I often, when I write for Business Day and other newspapers, I call POPIA a bulldog with no teeth. Because unless I'm wrong, and there are probably some cases, but you know, the legislation say, if I remember correctly, that it's a 10 million rand fine and or 10-year imprisonment for the directors of the company. Have you ever seen anyone being fined or gone to prison? TransUnion, massive data breach a few years ago. We had Dis-Chem, we had Transnet. I mean, the list goes on. There are probably many more cases that was just never published. By the way, and this is in the public domain, now I love TransUnion, they're one of my clients, and we all need them, and we work with them, of course, as banks. Do you know the password for the server that protected at that stage 46 million South Africans' credit details? What was the password for that server?
Oh dear.
Password. The password was password. Okay, it's funny, shame.
Wow.
But if we can't even apply privacy regulation, what are we going to do with AI regulation? That's the point. And then the question is also between innovation and regulation. What we see in the EU is, some of you obviously know about this, the AI Act that came into force, if I'm not mistaken, August of last year, and they're rolling out the different pillars. It is a great piece of legislation to study, and not in detail, but look at what it says, because if you're a South African organization working with European Union corporates or customers, consumers, you have to comply. I think a lot of the regulation we will have in South Africa will be based on that act. I've been involved with the CSIR and other organizations. We were about 80 people to give recommendations to government on what AI regulation should look like in Africa. I was very encouraged. We were a hugely diverse group of people, but also one of the key themes was let's take AI regulation like the EU AI Act, what the US and Canada and others, China are doing, but make sure we make it Afrocentric. In other words, that it applies to our people, our society, our history. A lot of great things were done in that initiative. As far as I know, the kind of recommendations have now gone to the presidency. Now we wait. I don't know how long we can wait. In 3 years from now, platforms like ChatGPT will be 1,000 times more powerful than now. 3 years. How much time do we have for AI, to wait for AI regulation? My encouragement to all of you is, and I think obviously you hopefully have been doing it already, you have to have your own regulatory framework in the bank or in any business, irrespective of what our government is doing or not, because it will protect you, it will protect your reputation, it will protect your customers. But, and this is where the positive angle comes in, there are more and more case studies that show if you use technology like AI or automation responsibly, if you comply to regulation, whether it's your own or the state regulation, there's a good chance that you will become an even more profitable organization. So it's not just about towing the line, hoping you're not being caught out or that you're suddenly on the front page of the Business Day and the Sunday Times. It actually makes business sense. So just to conclude before we see if there are any questions, think about this topic as a parent, as a fellow citizen of this country. Think about the future of our children, future of this bank, future of your career. Treat compliance in the age of AI not just as an unnecessary tick box. It is incredibly important that we do this right. I encourage you to keep on learning, to keep on being inquisitive, to learn from each other, go to conferences, read books, and we can create a better future in our country with this technology if we do this right.